Okay, I'm going to make a palette knife painting of a piece of fruit. I have an apple, a green apple here on the table, and I'm going to first sketch that onto my little canvas here. And when doing this, keep in mind there's a number of different approaches. If I was doing an observational painting, I would try to draw and paint what I see. But a lot of painters use nature and observe nature to get ideas or to get inspiration to paint. They're certainly not a slave to it, and they use it as a starting point. And I think that would be a good approach here, to not worry about, a realistic painting of an apple, which a camera can certainly do quite readily. And in the long run, even with realistic paintings, they're far more interesting depending on how much of we see of the artist in the translation of that image onto the canvas. So just to get to the basics here, you want to do your subject, the fruit, or whatever you're doing, larger than life size here. And that's because it'll make, I think, for easier to paint and a better composition. If I were to do the fruit, kind of life size, or that's a little bit bigger than life size, there's still, quite a lot of space around here that wouldn't get painted, or it could get painted, but it just would be, not that, maybe not that exciting, depending on what you put in the background. But it would be harder to paint the apple as well. It's a little awkward using the palette knife at first. You'll get used to it, and you can do quite a lot of detail even with a palette knife once you get the hang of it. But at first it'll be a little awkward, so it'll be much easier to work bigger, and I think your composition could be better if you work larger as well. So I'm encouraging everybody to do bigger than life size. Just kind of think of it as, in cinema, they're zooming in on a subject, and therefore it fills up more of the screen, and the screen being, of course, our rectangle here. Now, I'm using vine charcoal, or actually this is willow charcoal, which is kind of a type of vine charcoal. Willow charcoal is almost always soft. It comes in thin or thick, medium, but this is, I think, considered a slightly thicker piece, and I've kind of broken it in half. And what I like about, as you can see, what I like about it is you can wipe it off really easy, change your mind, and change your composition. So I'm going to work larger, and I could put it right in the middle, but that's pretty common, and it has a disadvantage of being sort of equal on both sides. It's usually a little more interesting maybe to shift it to the left or right or up and down so that you have unequal sides in different proportions. Variety is good in composition, it turns out. So I'm going to maybe go larger. Maybe I'm going to even, if I want, I can even have part of this, cut off at the top there. Maybe I'm going to go a little bit smaller. I'm just kind of going on the reason I'm going a little bit smaller is, and I could adjust the shape. I'm looking at that apple shape, and it's kind of maybe thicker at the top. So at this stage, it's all about shapes, and you're playing with shapes. So I want interesting shapes. Maybe I don't want a perfectly round shape. I want a shape that's, a little, like I'm being inspired by that shape, I guess. I don't have to copy it necessarily, but I can be inspired by it. And I guess there's this sort of round top here. So this is But I really, what I guess one of the reasons I put it where I did is I kind of like the shadow that's being cast. Because my light just so happens, and I could have moved things around differently if I wanted different lighting, but the lighting is coming in from that back window behind the apple, hitting the top of the apple. A lot of the apple is in shadow, and it's casting, and it has this great sort of cast shadow, and I think I'm going to really kind of make a lot out of that coming down out of this angle. And so that's my composition. I could put in, there's this interesting line. I don't know if I'll put that in or not, but you know, that's what I see there. All right, so I think I'm going to just make that my composition, and for now, yeah, that's fine. So once you have a composition figured out, you can paint right on top of this. Sometimes, you know, the charcoal could get mixed in with your paint, and but you know, that's usually not a problem. Some people kind of slightly dust it off so that, you know, excess charcoal won't get into the paint, but I don't find that to be too much of a problem, especially in a palette knife painting where you're putting on a fair bit of paint. Now, when you do this, you basically want to find a way, and you know, this is play, you're experimenting, you can find different ways to put on the paint. You want to get over the fear of using a lot of paint. I'd say my best advice is to, you know, you can start anywhere you want. Most people, of course, start with the object. We human beings are very object centric. We think that, you know, shape there is the most important thing because it's my subject. It's an apple. It's delicious, and you know, so I'm gonna work on the apple. I think that's what this whole painting is about. But experienced painters know that, well, no, this is a flat world here. It's a rectangle, and how we divide it up is kind of your design. So no matter what you're doing, whether it's a landscape or a portrait, you're always going to come to this rectangle, which is your first major shape. And this is your picture plane, and you're going to divide it up different ways. And the name of the game is, you know, dividing it up in interesting ways, interesting to the eye. And then when you go to paint it, realize that every shape and how it plays off of each other is really what creates the visual interest. So you could start anywhere, and maybe your background is what's really going to make this painting come to life. Maybe it's going to have, you know, a lot of wild colors or movement. You know, Van Gogh would have, you know, probably a lot of movement in his background, movement throughout his whole painting. So maybe your strokes are going to, you know, you're going to feel, you know, get into that and have fun with strokes. Maybe you're going to really get into dragging one color on top of the other. You know, you can, you know, it's okay to start on the object, but long as that's not the only thing that you're doing. So, you know, I'm really, you know, I'm just taking my yellow right out of the, you know, straight out of the tube, and because it, you know, I could just, it helps me feel that light, that, you know, that strong light that's hitting the top of that apple. I may change that, and this is kind of the key to painting, is that, you know, a lot of the mixing happens right on the canvas. I could have, you know, I can go ahead and say mix here a yellow green, because there's, you know, seems to be yellow green on that apple, you know, and I could, you know, but that's, you know, that there again, I'm kind of falling back on copying. I don't have to. I could make that, I could put any colors I want here. But probably the most important is how what I've put down interacts to what is next to it. That is what makes the contrast, the excitement, the relationships that are going to make your painting come to life. Right now, I could base my relationships on what I see there for inspiration. One other thing that looks kind of cool is this light spilling down beside the apple, and the apple is actually pretty dark next to it. So, and you know, I'm not even sure what color that is around the table. It's just light. And a lot of times when artists try to depict light, they um, use they use color to depict light, because this is just pigments on a board. So I'm gonna maybe take my white and I'm gonna pick a color. Maybe I'm gonna use I'll use pink. I'm gonna mix a pink here, a lot of white in it. I'm gonna put that down here, and so, and I'm gonna bring it right up close to this other color. And that's just a flat pink. Remember, some of the excitement happens by dragging. Maybe I would drag bits of white in there, and I'll let it some of that show, or maybe I'll put some of that yellow in with the pinks, and it goes kind of orangey. But I won't over mix it, because that's, I think, in painting, weaving together different colors is where it gets pretty exciting. I may decide to use a darker green next to this. So, because here's where the light and dark contrast might come in. So notice it's really the play, the interaction here that ends up being what the painting is about. Those are, just like in a drama, the relationships between the people, between the actors, is what is exciting. It's not different in painting. It's this kind of visual story, and so I want even more drama there. I'm gonna I'm gonna put red right in with my green there, and it almost kind of cancels out some of that green, and I'm getting this kind of really dramatic dark light there. Even maybe more so. Let's see. I'm gonna use my other orangey yellow. So I'm just kind of experimenting and mixing a lot of these colors together to see what I can get here. And I want even a darker. I know my blues are dark, so I'm gonna put it. So I'm kind of figuring out, not even figuring out. I'm playing, with colors and letting them mingle and drag. I'm not doing the kind of little strokes that create movement. I may start playing with that as I go along, but it's good to jump around a lot and not get too hung up on one area. The best painters kind of build their whole canvas up at once. Like, so what's happening on the other side over here? What's this relationship like? Maybe it's actually going to be, maybe I'm going to mix a purple. I don't know why, but I'm kind of feeling like I'm going to use the ultramarine blue, and I'm going to make it a little bit purple here, and I'm going to put that on the background over here. So my background's going to, change a little bit, but I'm going to try that over there, and a lot of these. Notice I wipe my palette off before I get another color, so I don't muck up my colors too much here. Got a little bit more green I'm mixing up here, and I really want it. I'm going to put that up against this purpley color and see what happens. I want, because what we call color interaction is probably one of your most powerful kind of visual tools that you have, is how these colors play off each other. You can have the most beautiful color in the world, and it really is nothing by itself. It's what's around it that creates the visual excitement and language. So if I want that lighter, I would put the white straight onto my palette and mix it, so that's what I mean about, altering and changing colors while they're already on the canvas. That's where it gets kind of exciting. And look at all this color. I'm kind of going wild here. And I may I may tone it down. I may get more realistic. I kind of hope I don't get too realistic.